Good afternoon, everyone. My name is Carley Cumbest, and today I will be talking about infertility and how it deals with the flourishing life. But first, I would like to discuss what the flourishing life is and what it looks like. A flourishing life can be summed up in one word: shalom. Now, I always knew shalom meant peace, but I didn't understand exactly what that meant. Shalom can be described as a way that things were created to be. God created the world in a certain way, and he created humans a certain way, and he wanted it to stay that way. But sadly, there was a fall, and man sinned and brought sin and death and suffering into the world. So shalom can be summed up in three phrases. Number one, unimpaired relationships. God created relationships, and he wants us to flourish in those relationships. And it is important for us to make sure that we do everything we can to try to bring back the shalom that God created for relationships. Number two is wholeness. God created us whole, and he wants us to flourish in this wholeness and try to find how to be whole even in a fallen world. And number three is creation fulfilling its destiny uninterrupted. Now, this is what I'm mainly going to be focusing on today. God created us to flourish, and he gave us many commandments on how to do this. And the one I'm specifically talking about today is found in Genesis 1:28. God blessed them, and God said to them, "Be fruitful and multiply. Fill the earth and subdue it." Now, be fruitful and multiply. What exactly does this mean? Well, obviously, it means to have children. Children show that a man and woman are committed to each other in a covenant relationship. God created marriage, and he created it to be beautiful, and he created it so that children would fill the earth after marriage. Children are the symbolic and literal reflection of the two becoming one flesh. This is such a beautiful picture, and it's so important for us to understand this because this is the way God created it to be. So how does infertility fit into all of this? Infertility is affecting 10% of married couples in America. Over 6.7 million women are infertile in America today. That is a huge number. According to statistics, about 10 of us in this room could be infertile. That is really sad. So what is a Christian to do about this? What is a Christian to do when they find out that they cannot have children the natural way? Well, scientists today have discovered something called IFV. It stands for in vitro fertilization. In vitro stands for outside of the body. So basically, you take a woman's egg and a man's sperm, and you take them out of the body and put them in a laboratory dish and wait for them to fertilize. Obviously, this is not the natural way that God intended, but is it necessarily immoral? I believe with all of the options that IVF provide, there are actual ways that you can do this and still be seeking shalom and pleasing God. But there are some ways that I believe that is immoral. Number one would be surrogate motherhood. You can take the wife's eggs and the man's sperm and put them together and fertilize them and place them in another woman outside of the marriage. Now let's remember what children are. Children are a literal reflection of marriage and the beauty that God intended it to be. So when you're bringing in an outside source, how is that reflecting your marriage? That is one question that I find myself asking when it comes to IVF. Number two, a third party's egg or sperm. Let's say the wife's eggs cannot be used for some reason, or the husband's sperm. Is it okay to use a third party's egg or sperm in this situation? That's a question many couples find themselves asking today. Now, I've mentioned some of the issues that it comes up with, but here are three more. Number one is the expenses. I Googled it just to see how much exactly it would cost, and it was over tens of thousands of dollars, and that's not even guaranteed that you will actually be pregnant. I believe the percentage is under 20% that it'll actually work. Number two is the leftover fertilized eggs. Now, many times, they make the woman take many injections that make her ovulate more than 10 eggs when normally she would only ovulate one. Now, this means that there are many fertilized eggs that are left over, and what are you supposed to do with them? Number one, you can freeze them for a later time. Number two, you can give them over to stem cell research to be torn apart and used for other medical reasons. Or number three, you can throw them away. Now, IVF also offers you to go in and remove certain chemicals that are in the fertilized egg, such as if you think it's a potential disease or if it's hereditary disease. Or let's say you can even begin to edit your child and see which fertilized egg could possibly be taller or which one looks more strong. You can pick and choose which child you think should enter this world. Is that not taking away the humanness of an embryo? So these are the questions I've been asking myself. Exactly what is this technology and how does it work? The church needs to rise up and educate themselves on the issues that today people are facing and couples are facing, such as IVF. IVF is the #1 treatment used for infertile women. This is a big issue, and we need to know how to answer these questions that couples have today. Is it okay to kill an embryo? Is it okay for the egg and sperm to come outside of the marriage? Is it humane to freeze embryos? And is it taking away personhood to attempt to edit an embryo and make it the way that you want it to be? So, what is the church to do? Why should Christians care about this? #1, it is a huge need and ministry opportunity. Like I said, over 10% of married couples in today's culture are infertile. A lot of people need help, and Christians can rise up and help these Christian couples on how to do this from a godly and a biblical way. The church has a lack of knowledge on the issue of infertility. I have grown up in church, and I know many godly people, but I've never once heard a sermon on infertility or how this godly couple went through infertility and used the science that God has given us, but in a biblical way. Why is the church not talking about this? This is so important. Christian couples have nowhere to go to get the answers that they need. So, I believe that it's time for the church to step up and educate themselves on how we can deal with this in a biblical way. So what am I going to do about it? Obviously, I can't do much about people being infertile or fertile, but I believe that I can engage and develop others by having a voice. I am pursuing a degree in counseling after I graduate from Impact 360, and I hope to go to churches and speak to people on how they can deal with cultural issues from a biblical standpoint. I want to be able to engage these people and show that the cultural issues that they're dealing with, they're important and they're needed, and there's a biblical way to look at them. I want to embody the values by having knowledge on the Bible and what God says a human is and what God intended marriage to be and what children are for. These things are so important, and I encourage you all today to educate yourself on these facts. The church today has no knowledge on infertility, and Christian couples are finding themselves going to pastors, going to mentors, saying, what should I do? I want to have children. I want to fulfill my calling of being fruitful and multiplying, but I can't. What can I do? Is IVF a good option? And they are turned away. I don't know. Go to your doctor. What if your doctor's not a Christian? How are they going to educate you on a biblical standpoint when they aren't Christians? This is such a huge need. Pastors and mentors and leaders and small group leaders, and even if you're not in the leadership at a church, you need to know how to deal with issues like infertility from a biblical way. It is time to rise up and know why you believe, and what you're going to do about it. Because this is a big issue. This is affecting so many people, and you can have a voice in this. And I hope that God gives me a voice in this too. Thank you.